We all set for kickoff, Damien? All set? Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Tá fáilte rómh go léir. You're all welcome. Can I ask you to put your mobile phones on silent, please? Thank you. And we'll do one acknowledgement to country rather than have every speaker doing acknowledgement to country. We'll do one and then it's done, because I notice that I go to events and everybody comes up and does acknowledgement to country, whereas the principal speaker or the MC can do it on behalf of Gorta, okay? And while you all sit and grieve about last night's loss, we just need to raise a toast to Katie McCabe, who with sore fingers and bashed heads and everything else, she got stuck in and did a wonderful job. And I think they should make her the next president of Ireland, Katie McCabe. Okay, I'm getting the eyes. It's time to kick off. It's 2 o'clock or thereabouts, a little bit after it actually. And we, the Great Irish Famine Commemoration Committee, and all assembled here, acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Straits Islander peoples as the traditional custodians of our land, Australia. We acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation as the traditional custodians of this place we now call Sydney. Now I'm going to ask for the Australian National Anthem. And is there... No? Yes, come along and do it. Thank you. All right, next page. Now, Joan Leach, of course, is a descendant of the orphan children, and it's an honour to have her here every year to sing the Australian National Anthem. Joan, it's over to you.
Thank you, Jerry. I'd like everyone to join in to sing our anthem together. Australian, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free, with golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Lovely. Beautiful. Thank you, Joan. You know, Joan, I think you're getting better at it. Right, we'll do the Irish National Anthem now. And I'm going to do the verse in Irish, and then I'm going to try and sing it in English as well, so that you'll understand what the Irish is all about. Sheena fina foil, a tá faoal ag éireann, buin dar slú, hartan da rán ag thugain, fé bhóid vesir, Shantir ar sincher fasta, ni ogfer fentir om no fentrol. Anach da hemsa barna buel, le jan reil con bosch no sil, le gan ischreach, feloch na biler, Shaliv Konig Auron Vim Askelge Aspirla Anish out of in English. Soldiers are we whose lives are pledged to Ireland. Some have come from a land beyond the wave, sworn to be free, No more our ancient sire land shall shelter the despot or the slave. Tonight we man the Barnab whale in Erin's cause, come woe or will, mid cannons roar and rifles peal. We'll chant a soldier's song. Garamina Maga Galea. Please be seated. Thank you. Now, we've got some lovely music here today for you. Where are they, my musicians? Come along. Don't be shy. Thanks. Thanks, Fez. We've got... Oh, they were going to do the national anthem. I stuffed that one nicely. Good, I didn't read the small print. Oh, my apologies. Do you want to do it again? Yes, come on. Come along. Indeed, to be sure, Trish, that's right. So, Pell and Rebecca, the Irish national anthem. Yes? That's what it says. Is that right? Come along. Up here to the mics. Now, Pell comes from Sweden. Imagine. And he plays the tin whistle. And he's a great friend of the chieftains.
I can't do it as good as you.
Well, you do it then, surely.
I cannot do it as good as
Come on. Rebecca's going to do it as well. Right.
you. You must all know the words by now, so... Shinna Fina Fall a Taffingale Bwindar Slu Hartim Doranicuen Fui which facer Shantir Shin Sheer Fasta Niag far Fwyn Chirnan na Fwyn Trail Annog dyn hym sa fern y bwel Lygan gil hwn bas nos sail Lygun ysgrogt fi law knab I ler Sio liv canig o'r on y fi
Yeah, well, there's nothing like a double whammy, is there, really, in these hard times? Right. Now, Damien, I would like to call Damien to the podium. And Damien Ennis, of course, is the chair of the GIFCC. And Damien is going to do a little welcome to everybody.
Thank you. I will be very brief, uncharacteristically. Thank you for everyone who's made the effort to come here today. Thank you to everyone who's been involved for the effort that goes into this year on year. This year we were obviously slightly different. We were selected as the international venue for the Ireland's National Famine Commemoration Day. And we're very proud of that. We're also very happy for everyone that was involved in that particular process. Just a quick acknowledgement of some of the people that are here. I'd like to welcome Ambassador Tim Maw, Thomas Byrne, Minister of State, Julia Finn, MP and Parliamentary Secretary for the Arts in New South Wales, Rosie Kane, Martin Killian, COO of Museums History New South Wales, and Mary Darwell, CEO of Museums History New South Wales. Many of the Irish community are incredibly supportive of us. I know Alan Humphreys, the Irish Support Agency President, is here. Karen Murphy, St Patrick's Day Festival. Pamela O'Neill, who's part of the Celtic Council of Australia. Jelf Kildea and the Irish media is represented here as well. Last but not least, for the acknowledgements, Fez Champion for his work every year, tirelessly. Cleona Mullins on the harp. Jackie McPhee, who you'll hear later. Pell Soderstrom, our Swedish Celtic friend. Angela Scott and Susan from the Museum of History New South Wales, and of course Jerry Faulkner, who has a much better singing voice than I thought. Very briefly, Tens of thousands of people left Ireland under unimaginable circumstances, spending 4 to 5 months at sea, fleeing indescribable horror, losing loved ones, breaking up families, loss of connection to their land, seasick, tired, scared, uncertain, arriving in cities across Australia that looked very different to what we know today. Yet they found work, met partners, started families, built homes, and created a legacy that has resulted in an Australia where 30% of the current population has at least some Irish ancestry. We stand before a monument unveiled in August 1999 with 420 names of the Earl Grey scheme, which transported 4,114 Irish orphans to Australia. We remember them all. We would like to thank all at the Museum of History New South Wales, who are the custodians of the monument. They say that everyone dies twice, firstly when you leave this world, and secondly when your name is spoken for the last time. We stand here today to ensure that never happens to the people that came here during that time. Let us set out to be able to bow to the past, but not be bound by it. I'll give you back to Jerry for the...
Okay, the introduction for Mary Darwell, have you got that, Damien? I wasn't given one. So Mary Darwell is the CEO of the Museums of History New South Wales, and she's here to... You're going to do it. So it's not Mary Darwell then. I'm glad somebody else is making mistakes here today. That's great. I'll just tell the jokes, it's all right. So what's your name? Martin Hilliard. Killiard. Okay, Martin, and you are the? Director of Collections. That's the man. That's the man, lads. That's where you pass the money through. Martin, make your way to the podium, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jerry. And thank you all. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a special day for all of us, not least of which for me. It's the 159th anniversary of the death of John Killian, who was my first Irish ancestor who came to Australia today. His greater claim to fame is that he was the first husband of a woman by the name of Jane Feeney, who was one of the Irish orphans who spent her first nights in Sydney here at Hyde Park Barracks, and who's one of the over 400 names who are commemorated on the memorial. So it's wonderful to have such a personal connection and to such a group of people today. Jane Feeney went on to be quite the matriarch of the family. She in fact married 3 times, had 8 children, and clearly from the records continued to have a very strong connection with the young girls who came out with her on the ship Digby in the late 1840s. They settled in the mid-north coast of New South Wales and continued a connection with each other through marriage or through business dealings, through land and so on 30 and 40 years later. And I think that that's probably testimony to the experience that very much galvanised them together, but is probably a great indication of the Irish community around the world that it gathers and unites on every occasion, including today. So I'm very pleased to welcome you to the UNESCO UNESCO World Heritage listed Hyde Park Barracks. It's wonderful to see so many people here today and a number of familiar faces. Really to remember the survivors of the Great Irish Famine and their hundreds of thousands of descendants. As you all here today know, over 2 million people emigrated from Ireland during the Great Irish Famine, with a large number settling in Australia, with over 30,000 single Irish women arriving in Australia throughout the famine in the decade after that. One of the most vulnerable groups, of course, of those Irish women were the female orphans under the Earl Grey scheme. And young women who were between 14 and 18 were recruited, gathered from the workhouses across Ireland and brought to Australia with an aim of assisting the labour force. It's estimated that over 4,000 girls arrived between 1848 and 1850, with over half temporarily housed here in the building behind us at Hyde Park Barracks. So many spent their first nights in this extraordinary building and sleeping in a new country in that building. The monument behind me here was inspired by the call of the former Irish President, Mary Robinson, to remember the Great Hunger of 1845, 1852, and those who died or who were forced to emigrate. After discussion with the then Historic Houses Trust, the barracks was selected as a fitting location for the memorial, which was opened in 1999, as many of you know. The memorial was created by dismantling a section of the southern wall. And as you can see, a table cuts through the wall. It represents the famine experience on one side and the new world and a bountiful future on the other. And the glass panel lists a selection of 420 young women, a sample of those young women who left behind all that they knew to start a new life in Australia. Today, the memorial continues to inspire reflection on the generations of immigrants who left hardship to make new lives here, and it's an absolute highlight of anyone's visit here to Hyde Park Barracks from wherever they come in the world or throughout Australia. It's certainly the responsibility and great privilege of our organisation, Museums of History New South Wales, to be able to work with passionate community organisations such as the Great Irish Famine Commemoration Committee to ensure that the shared histories of our unique heritage places continue to be remembered. Thank you.
Now it's my turn to introduce Mary Darwell, the CEO of Museums. You're not speaking at all. That was it. Because it's in the program twice, you see, you're in there, and then, yeah, right, okay. Okay. Okay, so it gives me great honor to introduce a gentleman that I've known only a few years, but we spent time on high stools together in the bush, and we mix and gather and talk, and he comes to the events, and he was on the GIFCC committee as well. And for those of you who don't know Dr. Jeff Kildea, I'll just give you a small bit about him before I invite him up to the podium. I have a bit here for him. He was educated at the University of Sydney, where he gained a BA, an LLB, and an LLM, and at the University of New South Wales, where he received an MA in History and was awarded a PhD for his thesis on sectarianism in the 20th century, early 20th century Australia. So he practiced law in the early 70s and became a barrister in 1979. And after receiving his PhD, he taught Irish and Australian history at the University of New South Wales and at Sydney University Centre for Continuing Education. And this is the good bit, in 2014, he held the Keith Cameron Chair of Australian History at University College Dublin, and that's where he learned how to drink Guinness, that's for sure. He's written many books and articles and presented papers in Australia, Ireland, and the United States. And if you put in Dr. Jeff, that's Jeff, Kildea, Kildea, into Google or any other search engine, you'll find out the whole host of books that he's written, all, of course, of a history nature. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please give a warm welcome to Dr. Jeff Kildea.
Thanks very much, Jerry. Now, I wish to thank the organisers of the 2023 National Famine Commemoration for inviting me to speak here today. 6 years ago, in 2017, it was my great privilege to address Sydney's annual famine commemoration and to speak about my great-great-grandmother, Rosanna Fleming, one of the more than 4,000 Irish famine orphans who came to Australia between 1848 and 1850 under the Earl Grey scheme. And her name is among the 420 names inscribed on the glass panels that form part of this city's beautiful but understated famine monument. Today I want to zoom out from the story of that single individual to look more broadly at the experience of those who came from Ireland to Australia in the mid-19th century, full of hope for a better life, but full of fear and trepidation at the prospect of the long and perilous voyage needed to take them from the old world to the new. Now, this theme came to me during a visit I made to King Island last week. For those who do not know King Island, it lies at the western entrance to Bass Strait, the body of water that separates Tasmania from the Australian mainland. Lying on the 40th parallel of latitude, King Island is halfway between Cape Otway in Victoria and the northwest coast of the island of Tasmania. Sailing ships travelling from England or Ireland to New South Wales would sail south of the equator to the 40th parallel and take advantage of the strong winds known as the Roaring Forties to race across the Southern Ocean. Initially, those ships sailed south of Tasmania, or Van Diemen's Land as it was then known, before turning north to complete their journey. But with the discovery of Bass Strait in 1798 by George Bass and Matthew Flinders, mariners would reduce by a week the sailing time to the colony by passing through the strait. The problem, however, was that they had to thread the needle, passing either north or south of King Island, which at 65 kilometres in length occupied 13% of the width of the strait, right in the middle, thus posing a significant hazard in the days before modern navigation aids. Even old technology was lacking until mid-century. It was not until 1848 that a lighthouse was built at Cape Otway, and another 13 years would pass before one was built at King Island. Strong winds, uncertain currents, and inadequate charts of the coastline made the passage through the strait treacherous. As I learned on my recent visit to King Island, many a ship's captain failed to thread the needle, and the rugged west coast of King Island is the site of several shipwrecks from those times. Frequent stormy weather, blocking out for days on end the sun and the stars on which those early mariners relied for navigation, meant many ships were dashed on reefs or on the razor-sharp rocks that are a feature of King Island's west coast. In January 1835, a ship called the Neva left Cork carrying 150 female convicts, 9 free women and 55 children. 4 months later, it struck a reef off the northwest coast of King Island and broke up. Of the 239 passengers and crew, only 15 survived. It was then Australia's worst shipping loss. 10 years later, an even worse disaster occurred. In what remains the highest loss of life in a civil disaster in Australian maritime history, 400 lives were lost when in the early hours of the 4th of August, 1845, the Kataraki struck a reef off the west coast of King Island, 100 metres from the shore. Storms had prevented navigational observations for 4 days, and the captain thought he was further north, near to Cape Otway. The Kataraki was an immigrant ship that had sailed from Liverpool on the 20th of April 1845, carrying British and Irish passengers, men, women and children. Its living quarters were crammed with families full of hope for a new life in a new land. After almost 4 months at sea, they were less than a week from their destination. In many shipwrecks, such as that of the Hive, which 10 years earlier had run aground at Jervis Bay, 200 kilometres south of Sydney, the passengers and crew could float or swim or wade ashore to the safety of a sandy beach. In the case of the Kataraki, those not trapped below decks were dashed against the jagged rocks. And of the 409 passengers and crew, only 9 survived. Now, I have taken the time to describe the wrecks of the Neva and the Kataraki not as a lesson in Australia's maritime history, but to highlight the fact that sea travel, in the days when the Irish famine orphans were shipped out to Australia, was a perilous activity. Today, travellers from Ireland to Australia who board one of the 4 or 5 daily flights out of Dublin Airport do so in the complete expectation that within 24 hours they will touch down in Sydney at the Sydney Airport, safe and sound, with little to contend with apart from jet lag. Even so, there are still plenty of nervous aeroplane travellers. So it is difficult for us to imagine how those young women, whom we remember today, must have felt when they set out on that long and perilous journey, their heads no doubt filled with horror stories of the many ships that had been wrecked making the journey. The Kataraki was just one of those examples. Now, I am not aware of any of the Earl Grey ships having been lost at sea, but several ships carrying Irish famine refugees foundered on their way to North America. The most notable was the Carracks of Whitehaven, which sailed from Sligo and was wrecked on a reef off Quebec in May 1847, with the loss of more than 120 lives. So last week, standing on the shore of King Island, at the wreck sites of the Kataraki and the Neva, it struck me how heroic, in the true sense of the word, were those young women who chose to come to Australia under the Earl Grey scheme. As Evelyn Conlon has pointed out in her novel Not the Same Sky, their choice was not exactly a free one. Either remain in the workhouse where death and disease were a daily occurrence, or take the gamble on a perilous sea voyage. What an awful predicament in which those young women found themselves. Plucked from their noxious, overcrowded workhouses, many had not even seen the sea before boarding the small wooden sailing ships that would be their home for the next 4 months. And small they were. The Lady Peel, on which my great-great-grandmother travelled across 20,000 kilometres of ocean, displaced just 593 tonnes and was 36 metres long and 6 metres wide. By comparison, today's Manly ferries, which ply the 11 kilometres across the relative calm of Sydney Harbour, are almost twice the size, displacing 1,122 tonnes and measuring 70 metres by 13 metres. So it is right that we gather here each year to commemorate, indeed to celebrate, the more than 4,000 young women, the mothers of this land, as the poet Pamela O'Connor dubbed them, who made that perilous journey from Ireland to Australia. And in doing so, we should not forget the pioneering work of Tom Power and his faithful band of supporters, who, inspired by the call of President Mary Robinson in 1995, commissioned this evocative memorial to those women and to all those forced to leave their homeland by the ravages of the Great Irish Famine.
Thank you very much, Jeff. What a wonderful insight into life on those ships and the terrible trips around King Island all the way up here to Sydney and into Melbourne as well. Amazing insight, and thank you. That was a very interesting talk. Thank you, Jeff. Now, I'm a Galway person, of course, and it gives me great honour to introduce a lady who came from Galway to Sydney about 2 years ago now. Is that right, Rosie? Our lovely Consul General of Ireland, Rosie Kane from Letterfrack in Connemara. Tá fáilte ród. Welcome aboard.
Jerry? Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good afternoon. Accordia, as Ireland's Consul General to New South Wales, it's a source of great pride and honour that Sydney has been chosen as the site for the 2023 International Famine Commemoration. For good and bad, the Irish famine has shaped who we Irish are as a people and has shaped our nation. We're now a nation of migrants. We have a huge diaspora all over the world. But the tragedy of the famine and the suffering that endued has also made us a very compassionate people, something that I've seen in spades here in Sydney, in particular in the Irish community. And I understand that many of them are here today to show support for the Famine Committee, and I want to thank them very much. Understanding the legacy of the famine and honouring those who were impacted is a big priority for the Irish government. And as a demonstration of this, I'm very honoured that we have Minister Thomas Byrne here with us today. I'd also like to acknowledge and pay tribute to the work of Mary Darwell and her team at Sydney Museum, I'll say Sydney, you know what I mean, for hosting the monument and for taking such care to highlight and celebrate the precious lives and memories of all those who crossed the waves in the hope of a better life in Australia, especially the orphan girls whose names are immortalised on the memorial itself. Gura Mahagat, thank you. Instances of hope were a rare thing during the famine. However, we stand here today in front of one symbol of hope. The Earl Grey girls came here with little but hope. But with extraordinary courage and resilience, they, along with their descendants, played such a crucial role in the shape and form of modern Australia. The orphan girls formed part of a well-worn path traversed by scores of Irish people then and since. Their impact on this land cannot be quantified, but if I may, I would like to quote the former President, Mary McAleese, who put it so well when she said, "Out of their courage, guts and gumption was distilled the spirit of Australia." This monument behind me stands not only as a testament to that courage, guts and gumption, but it also serves as a reminder to us all that despite the passage of time, there are still those in the world who are hungry, displaced and homeless, and that we, those who've benefited from open borders and hope, have to repay that debt. I owe so much gratitude to the many people past and present whose hard work and perseverance made it possible for us to come together at this beautiful monument to remember a difficult but defining moment for the Irish. To this end, I would like to acknowledge the tremendous contribution of the late Tom Power and the late Jack Mundy. I'd also like to thank Hussein and Angela Valamanesh for their vision, and I'd also like to thank the hard work of Dr. Trish Power and Dr. Perry McIntyre. I'd also once again like to thank Mary Darwell and her team here. I find it incredibly touching that this monument is located on such a historically and culturally significant site here in Sydney. To me, it demonstrates the affection and connection that this city of Sydney has, not just for the orphan girls, but for the Irish more generally, and the many thousands of Irish who have helped shape this city. I'd also like to thank the Ashling Society, to Tony and Jeff and all their members for helping to keep alive all of the Irish stories and culture. Thank you very much. It's such an amazing thing that you do in recording all our history. But before I finish, I would just like to thank Damien Ennis and his committee, MC Jerry, and of course the wonderful musicians we have heard from and will hear from more shortly. But I'd like to thank them for their hard work in organising today's ceremony. It is a very moving and respectful ceremony, one which not only honours the memory of those that perished, but one which honours the bravery and courage of those who left our shores and went on to leave an indelible imprint on this remarkable country. Thank you very much. Gura Mahagat.
Thank you very much, Rosie. That was wonderful. And what I'd like to do now is say that it is a great honour, and we don't often get the opportunity to have a government minister here. And we have a Minister for State from the Irish Parliament, from the Dáil Éireann in Dublin. He's a Drogheda man, but he actually has his seat as the Member of Parliament, the TD, Teachta Dála, in Meath East, which is possibly a suburb of Greater Dublin at this stage. It's very close to the outer skirts of County Dublin, Meath East, and he's Minister of State for a whole portfolio of tourism, culture, arts, the Gaeltacht, and sports and media. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Mr. Thomas Byrne, TD. Táfáilte Rót.
Gurv Magat Jerry, agus Gurv Magat Gachtan atá an seo neomh le Comóra dhéanamh a Gorta mór na hÉireann. Is mór an privilé dumsa bheith ivordeanta I láthar an seo I Sydney na Hastráile. Níl áras oramach gur ócháid ír speisialta I seo agus gan buchas liv, mar bhall de rialtas na hÉireann as an gcuire a thuair dumsa labhairt ag an seamarna seo a neomh. The impact of the Great Famine is often very hard to overstate. We are sadly familiar with the raw figures that reflect the level of death and emigration. That Ireland's population of close to 8.5 million people in 1845 had in just a few short years fallen to 6.5 million by 1851, and our population has never recovered, although we have made great strides in recent years. But beyond the mere numbers is the legacy of loss, of death, of cultural loss, decline of the language, and untold psychological impact and physiological impact for those who survived. So the story of the famine is a story of suffering and victimhood. Let's be clear about that. But it's not just such a story. It's also a story of a resilient and determined people persevering through tragedy and welcomed in far-off worlds. Faced with raw hunger and disease, many left behind the world that they knew to seek a better life in unfamiliar places far from home. In those challenging conditions, these migrants made new lives, new homes, new communities, but never forgetting where they and their ancestors have come from, and they have thrived and prospered. The Irish diaspora, and many of you here today, you have a unique connection to Ireland, and one that's greatly appreciated, and one that you have maintained through the generations. And it lives on today so clearly and vibrantly in Australia. One of the most notable of these links is, of course, as we speak much of today and always at this site, is the more than 4,000 young women and girls who were resettled in Australia through the Earl Grey scheme between 1848 and 1850. These orphan girls were recruited from workhouses across the 32 counties of Ireland to meet the demand for domestic labourers and single young women in the colonies. This commemoration marks the 175th anniversary of the start of the scheme, but it also coincides today, the commemoration, with a new generation of determined and inspiring young Irish women making their mark on the world stage. And we saw that last night with our team here in Sydney. I've also seen it as well, Sydney Swans and other sports teams here where Irish girls or Irish women are making a massive impact all across the world. So when remembering the suffering and the tragedy, the death and the loss, let us also remember that throughout our history, before the famine, through the famine and after the famine, Irish people have gone around the world with the best of intentions, with the best of work, determination to make things different and to make things right. And I do want to thank you all here in Australia and Sydney, those of you who have made the commemoration possible, who have been responsible many years ago for this beautiful and sacred monument, and the committee that keeps the memory alive, because memory is so important. Memory often fades, and if we don't remember, if we don't make an effort to remember, the memory will certainly fade. And that's why your committee is doing such important work. The monument is a beautiful but poignant reminder of not just of the young women who had to make their homes here, and literally here when they arrived, but also of the famine that forced them to leave their old lives behind. So today, we honour both the sense of loss, but also the achievements of the people and the enduring connection between Ireland and Australia. Agus guim ar son gachtainna a furbás I ri an Gorta mór, go raibh siad I measc na naomh inniuh, agus déanamid comóra speisialta orthu, agus ar na daoine a dan anseo, around an sail nua a chur le chéile anseo, agus dá shluachta freisin a tháinig in ní agus sibse inniuh a rinne a raibh anna tionachar agah san Astráil agus ar fud an domhain. Go raibh míle maith agah.
Good evening, Margaret, Minister, and it really is an honour to have you here. I'm glad you were here for the match last night too. Right. Now, we're going to do one of the parts of the ceremony that's very touching, and we would ask the musicians, I would ask Cliona Mullins, Jackie McPhee and Pele to take the stage, please, and crank up the music. I think Cliona is going to play her lovely song, Courageous Girl, is that correct? During the wreath-laying ceremony. So I would ask that our distinguished guest, Minister Byrne, lays the wreath, followed by the Assembly, and after that, if there are other members of the orphan descendants, then please, or anybody who wishes to lay a wreath, please do so. Thank you. Away lat, Cliona.
It was several years ago at this amazing event. I was playing the harp and I was so moved, as you are this evening, this afternoon. I went and wrote this song because it was just knowing what these girls had been able to achieve, having come from such tremendous hardship. I was also very impressed by what this committee has been able to do with paying it forward to refugees that are coming out right now. And that was such a beautiful, moving thing that we wrote this song about a Breach who comes on the Lady Peel. Sung today by Jackie McPhee.
Roaring seas and hunger each other as English is spoken here. I fight for life and I don't know why. Far from home, I carried on though my heart was broke. I carried on because I carried on pretending I was strong until one day I was. In Sydney town we arrived. We'd never seen such heat. Hundreds here just like me, knowing not what comes next. In the gold fields I'll marry, and I'll fertilize the soil and grow the country's rich ideas. Far from home, I carried on though my heart was broke. I carried on because I carried on pretending I was strong until one day I was. I'm proud of all you here who carry on the flame. For those like me who came here with broken hearts, to educate and feed them, there's space for all to flourish and grow the country's rich ideas. Far from home, we carry on though our hearts are broke. We carry on because we carry on pretending we are strong until one day we are. We carry on though our hearts are broke. We carry on because we carry on pretending we are strong until one day we are. Until one day we are.
Okay, we're going to, that was fabulous. Jackie McPhee singing there. She comes from Belfast. And Cleena Mullins, of course, told you all about the song because she wrote it. And then we had the able flute player, Pelle, from Sweden. Now, if we could be upstanding, please, and we'll do a minute's silence to the memory of all the orphan girls. Thank you. Amazing how long a minute is. Now I'm going to ask Damien Ennis, our chairman, to address you with some closing remarks, and I think he's going to invite us somewhere too.
Thanks, Jerry. Again, I'll be quite brief, really just to close out the event. First and foremost, thanks to everyone on a work day, finding the time to come down and spend some time here. For anyone who's been here when it's less populated, it's quite an extraordinary monument, which I think has been mentioned a few times. And I know, going through some of the history, that the original brief was to potentially have a statue. And like all good artists, they threw the brief out and came back with what they preferred. And we're all the better for it. Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for making the effort. Yeah, thanks for supporting the group. We all find our own reasons for being here. And long may it continue. It would be remiss of me not to thank the other committee members, Caroline, Aaron, Breda, Ian, Joan, Paula, Eva and Rebecca, as well as our subcommittee members, Trish and Nolene. Thanks for everyone for making the effort. And yes, we are going to pop down to PJ's for anyone who would like to, but I'm sure you'll be mingling here for a little bit before we go down to catch up with old and new friends. So thank you for your efforts.
So Cleana and Jackie and Pele are going to sing the beautiful song. You may remember some years ago, Brendan Graham arrived here. Brendan is a Castlebar man and a singer-songwriter who wrote You Raised Me Up. And basically this song as well that he wrote and came here amongst us twice, 2 years running. And Cleana does a fabulous job of this one, as does Jackie. So ladies and gentlemen, please make your way to the podium and we'll have a rendition of a most fabulous song, Orphan Girl. If you haven't got it, it's usually on sale here. I don't know if it's on sale today or not. No? No. It's not. It's been sold. But if you do, if you can get sold out, if you can get a copy of it, it is superb. Thank you.
Westport I was found. The workhouse is my world. Since the Brady's took us down, what time in life is left to me if I don't leave Westport town? But the crown is sending girls to sea for far Australia bound. Sail, sail, sail me away, sail to Australia, yeah. Sail, sail, sail me, I pray, sail me away to Australia. They say Australia's fine, they say Australia's fair. Australia's on my mind, and the fields of British there. I pray when this inspection's done, they'll say me fit to sail. For they don't just send out anyone. Oh Lord, don't see me fail. Sail, sail, sail me away, sail to Australia, yeah. Sail, sail, sail 16, but I'm ready now to go. I'm decent and I'm clean, fit for any man to know. And I will be some good man's wife if there I settle down and find myself a better life if I get to Sydney town. Sail, sail, sail me away, sail to Australia, yeah. Sail, sail, sail me, I pray, sail me away to Australia. Sail me away, sail me, I pray. Sail me away to Australia.
Garmagov.
Well, that must have kept you warm, did it? So that's the proceedings for now, all closed again for another year, although we were earlier this year. Other years we have to go in the shade, out of the sun. And Minister, believe me, it does get warm in Sydney. Okay, we're all heading down to O'Brien's. It's a pub down that way. And they serve stuff called Guinness in pint glasses with an Irish bar staff. So I hope you can make it, Minister, if you're allowed. Is that right, Rosie? Can we be there? One, Kiana one. Okay. All right, we'll see you all down there, and thank you very much. All the best. Take care. Thank you to Damien for inviting me as well and the committee. Thanks.